Quiet Connection is proud to be affiliated with the Blue Dot Project through Postpartum Support International. As an ambassador, I am dedicated to promoting perinatal mental health awareness, spreading the blue dot as a symbol of support and solidarity, and ending the stigma and shame. The blue dot is a universal symbol for perinatal mental health and is owned by the community. That means you. Anyone can use it. You'll notice a blue dot on all of Quiet Connection's social media accounts. To learn more, visit thebluedotproject.org. Welcome to Quiet Connection, a podcast dedicated to ending the stigma around postpartum mental health. I'm Chelsea. In this episode, I connected with Rachel, who shares her experience with infertility and the journey to building her family through surrogacy and adoption. She talks about the emotional difficulties, the pressures from cultural taboos, and the coexistence of grief and happiness. By creating her own community and finding support when she needed it most, Rachel learned that motherhood is more than just biology. Here's Rachel's story. Hello, today I'm here with Rachel. Rachel, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Excited to be here and nervous, as we just talked about.
Yes, always get nervous for some reason. We are both podcasters, and it doesn't matter how many times you do this, like that. As soon as you are getting ready to hit record, it's like butterflies.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I would love it if you could sort of introduce yourself and let us know, who was Rachel before Rachel was a mom?
I was born in Canada. And
yes.
Before mom Rachel I was a Canadian. I very much used to snow and weather and all that stuff. And I still ramble on it about like, going to school in like a snowsuit and just kind of telling my kids how easy they have it now. When you go to school, all you do is slap on a backpack and maybe a sweatshirt. But, mom had to go in full uniform of like a snowsuit.
Yeah.
But before that, so yes, grew up in Canada, then moved over to the US. And so before being a mom, just, I don't know, who was I really? You're like, just doing life as a 20-year-old. Just really like I was living in Southern California with my husband, and we were totally just doing life, like doing the whole, getting married and pursuing our careers big time. And then, we finally sat down and was like, well, let's have a family. What's funny, though, I tell this story too, is that someone had told us that they're like, you know what, after you get married, you should wait a year and enjoy being married. And naively, I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, I should party it up, and we should be doing all the things. And then so we waited a full year, and then we got into trying for another full year. So that's 2 years already. Then come to find out, we were like, okay, nothing's working. I think we even tried ovulation sticks and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, maybe we should go see a doctor. And sure enough, I have ovaries the age of like, was like 20 or 25 years older than I was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But they didn't find that out until like I got a second opinion. They were more like focusing on my husband. So we had male factor infertility. And so he would, they were doing all the tests, and then he was doing everything that he could to like increase the quality of sperm. And so not fun. And I think, and I talk about it a lot too, is like being in our 20s, it was like not ideal, right? Like we were very social butterflies. We like to go out and we like to eat junk food and drink and stay out. And so it was like, oh, so no more alcohol and no more staying up and, focus on sleep and, just all the things that, you try to, I think that really got to us. I think we went in waves, right? Like we're really, really good. And then it was like, I need to like, you just wanted, I think that's a lot of, I see that commonly with like clients now is like, it's just so much pressure to be perfect, right? You have to get your life perfect in order for this baby to come. Anyways, so we did IVF once and then, or like a couple, we did one stint. I'm saying it once because I did it a second time, a completely different time. It didn't work. And so we were just like hitting a wall. And I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to adopt. So, I was like, but what's funny is I've never told my husband that.
Like, still, you hadn't told your husband that?
Hadn't.
Or like,
At that time,
okay, I was like...
Yeah, no, we was not. So mom, Rachel, now has 4 kids, 2 adopted and 2 that are going via surrogacy. Yeah.
Okay, I was like, oh, wow, that's an interesting...
We were doing the IVF, and I was just like, I do the whole thing. You did the whole thing of just like, you know what, I'm done. I'm just going to take a break. Let's just focus back on life. And we, obviously I started thinking about it, and I was like, I always wanted to, so I should ask him, right? I was like, maybe he should be on board if I want to do this. And so I asked him, and sure enough, I'm like crossing my fingers. I'm like, I hope he doesn't want to, I hope he doesn't say no, because then to me, I'm like, what am I going to do with that? Like if I was almost pretty much set on it. So I think that's the tough thing for, conversations when people are facing infertility, and it's like one wants to and one doesn't. But he sure enough was just like, yeah, I'm on board. And like literally our lives changed after that. It was like, fast forward, we were in South Korea adopting our first son.
Wow.
He came home at 18 months. That was a whirlwind because, and I think this is going to touch on a lot of more of like what your topics are with postpartum, right? Like we went it straight into first time parents to a toddler.
Yeah.
We didn't even get the like newborn and it's just quiet. I mean, like, yes, newborn stage is hard. I get that. Like I've experienced it myself with the twins, but it's like when you're straight into a toddler who knows his, he has his preferences, he can talk, he can run.
Yeah.
He can walk, run, do all these things. You're just kind of like, oh man. It was a very interesting christening into motherhood. But talking about support afterwards, like I think I hit a slump. Like I thought I was, obviously we all think we're ready for motherhood. We're ready. And we're there. The transition alone is big. The trying to get him to sleep was like, it was also scary because that he was dealing with trauma. I mean, like having been separated from a foster family that they stay with for about like the first year of their lives. And I was just like, I don't know. Is he crying because he's, like, you don't know. Like, is he crying because he's going through all the trauma, or he's just crying because he's just a kid, like a toddler. So a lot of that, we didn't have much support there, like, and I think I definitely hit a lot of, I know it's not like total postpartum because it's, in terms of the hormones, right? It's not present in that sense because I didn't carry him, but I think there's a lack of support for like post-adoption depression because it's like I think I definitely was just like I'm not bonding with him the way I thought I would. Yeah, I'm overthinking everything, every little move he makes, every thing that upsets him. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going through grief. How do I fix it for him? Like I don't, and some of it was just like I had to. That's when I really leaned on my adoptive family community that I had built and was just like, what's normal? What's not? And a lot of them were just like, look, we're never really going to know, but, you overthinking it is just going to make it like you're going to, it was more detrimental to my own mental health, right? Like I was definitely going through a lot. Yeah. So that's just part of that part, my one kid. And then we then moved up north. So at that time we were in Southern California. I moved up north and then I tried IVF again because I was like, you know what? We're settled. We kind of got the hang of it finally, and we moved up here for my husband's job. And then we went at it again, but found like an exceptional doctor here. So I think with IVF, like I always talk about, like all fertility doctors are not made the same. Like this one that I found in the Bay Area was so much more supportive, less like of just like a, just turning like client, like they were like a numbers game pretty much. And she was the best. And so went down that route. But that was hard because it almost felt like, I almost don't know if even know, I equate it to secondary infertility because it's like I have a kid at home, but then I'm dealing with infertility still and all those feelings and, stresses of just like trying to be a good mom to him, but also trying for another baby. And then it was a dark time. I will have to say, yeah. And so I do wish that like support for adoptive mothers was just like there was more of it, right? Or maybe more talk of it. And that's kind of why I like to share this, because I don't know how, I think when we are going through the adoption route, we meet the adoptive families and we're just kind of like doing our thing, but you don't hear it as much. Like you hear a lot more of IVF and, either that being a success or not or whatever. But I think the adoption part, because I think with IVF too, like for us, it then kind of progressed into surrogacy. So I think that's another thing that is more talked about, but the adoption part is hard. But so that whole stint was pretty, it was a lot more successful because we got the one embryo. We had 2 embryos that came of it. But for my story, it was like, my constant thing was I went in through so many egg retrievals just to wake up to be like, none, 0, or like, yeah. It was the worst. It was like, oh, we woke up and it was like, we got 2, or we got 3. And then, so the process. It's like, you don't know how many days they're going to survive. They have to watch it. They have to do all the testing. And then you're just like, okay, we made it with 1. So I think 2 separate instances, we had the 2 embryos that made it. And then transferred 1 didn't work. And so I was just completely devastated. And I just said, the next one, just put on ice because I can't deal. And after doing a lot of healing and figuring out like, just kind of processing more so like what had happened, I was like, it's my time. This is a big signal that I need to take care of my son. Like he's still home. He's still little. Like enjoy the time with him. Because like I think when I was doing the IVF, I was just like, I was moody, I was hormonal, I was all things, and I was like, this sucks for him. Like it sucks for me to know that like I had so much mom guilt of just like I'm a first time mom, and here I am just like upset all the time and grumpy and tired and all these things. I'm like, I want to be with him, like and hang out, and hang out. You know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean.
Hang with it.
I just want to chill with my toddler.
Yeah,
because that's what toddlers are really good at. Chilling.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I was picturing that. Okay, yeah. So, yeah. Oh, my God. But, yeah, so I think once I had a good turnaround, then we adopted again. We went in and because the embryo that I lost was a girl, I was, like, really set on having, like, the boy-girl. So I was like, we're getting a girl. We're going to do this. And, so we went ahead and did that and did the same country, so South Korea. She came home a little younger. She was 15 months old when we picked her up. And so that was in itself a very big journey. But I think having gone through it once, like anything, you're just like, I kind of know what to expect. I know what it almost felt normal, right? Like the IVF was just so big too. And I was just like, oh, finally something I know what's going to happen. And like, I know what to do and expect. And I know how to like, when she comes home, I know all the things like, cause we did a lot of like bonding strategies and, try to do all those types of things with our son. That made it easier to go through the adoption again. So when she was home, all was good. And I told my husband, our long conversation, like a conversation from years ago is always how many kids, right? Everyone starts with that. Yeah. And so he says, he asked me how many I want. And I was like, 5. He's like, no, that's not happening, right? Like, no, you're insane. And I was like, I just always wanted a big family. And and at first, always like when with IVF, I was like, I gave that up. Technically, like I kind of let it go temporarily because I'm like, that's not going to happen, right? But then when we were reassessing the embryo, we're like, okay, I kind of want to adopt again because that would just, I just, like I said, it just felt like, it was just a great process and it's just a special way we've been growing our family. So it's like, why not? And but then my husband's like, well, wait a second. If we adopt again, I think it was more like I was very unsure of what would happen with the embryo. So I was like, well, I'm trying to protect myself. Like if the embryo doesn't work, we already have like it was horrible. So it was like, and so, but he's like, no, but what if it sticks? Then we have 4. And then I was like, oh yeah, okay. Well, I guess we should just try the embryo first and see. So we go to that decision because he wanted only 3. I think our agreed number was 3, and because it was in the middle, so and so, quote unquote middle.
It was a compromise.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a compromise, and so we go into the embryo discussion with our fertility doctor, and she was just like, well, given your history and all these things and your circumstances, like you have 2 kids, you're a full-time job, like you're working full-time. What about surrogacy? And I was like, oh, like, come on. I was just more like, when am I going to catch a bone here of like, I can get pregnant, right? Like, I think it was, someone that's faced infertility and yet still, like, I think it's still, there's moments still tight. Like, I just say it all the time. Like, I'm human. There are times where I'm just like, fuck, like, why don't I get that experience, And it's never have an answer, but it's okay to be frustrated about it.
Absolutely.
So I think that conversation was just like, well, what do you mean? Like, I can't. And so we really, and this is what I always advise other people now too, is that like, talk it through, like based on your circumstances, like what it would really, really look like if you did try. So for us, if we did want to really try, like if my priority was to get pregnant versus just bringing a baby home, they're like, your better outcomes are surrogacy if you want to just be a baby to come home. But if you absolutely like must experience pregnancy, here's what you have to do. And it was like a full protocol of like, I think it was like 2 to 3 weeks prior, I would have to go in almost 4 days a week, maybe, to do like this intravenous intralipid. I think it just helps the natural killer cells. I don't know if you know that, but like
a little bit. But...
Yeah. I mean, I might even be saying it all wrong. So whoever's listening, like you may resonate. Some people do. They're like, oh yeah, natural killer cells. And sometimes I'm like, is that the right term? But yeah, it's supposed to help so that everything can implant nicely. I think it's like, usually when, the embryo's transferred, sometimes there's the natural killer cells that kind of just like eat it all off. So there's ways to like get that to tame them down, from just being so crazy in there. So she's like, you'd have to go so many times like throughout the day. And I was like, well, how many hours would I have to be there in a day? She's like, well, probably tops an hour, but depends on your body. And some people might sit there for 4 hours. I was like, I work though, and I have to commute, and I have children.
Yeah.
And then she's like, and then after you do the transfer, you would just like up the amount of times you would go in to do this process. And I was like, huh. And then, obviously, then diet and like all these other things. Like it wasn't just that, but it was like all these other things you got to do. And I was working with a rheumatologist and everything. And I was like, okay, let me breathe. Like, let me, I need to think about that. And of course, I think my husband just said the same question again. He's like, well, if we just want the baby home, we've adopted our first two, like what's any different? You know what I mean? I think afterwards, perspective wise, we were like, I mean, we didn't know who carried our two first ones. I mean, because, I'll clarify, we did international adoption. So that program specifically is closed versus open adoptions, which are a little more common here, like in the US or, domestically. So it was closed. So we didn't know the birth parents. And I was like, and in this case, I was like, this is genetically ours, and we'd get to pick a surrogate and we'd get to be part of the process. And so I was like, I don't know why I totally overthought that. In the end, obviously I was grieving that like, I thought this was going to be my shot, to get pregnant. But so I had to kind of reprocess that, right? Like I had to re-grieve that. I felt like I was like, okay, I kind of got over it. Then I expected it again. And then I had to let it go again. And so that was pretty frustrating. So we go ahead and go through it. Surrogacy. I mean, I think with any option, right? Everyone's always like, oh, just adopt, just do surrogacy, just do all these things. And then, I'm guilty of that too. Cause I was like, okay, I picked surrogacy. We're good. Let's go, and then sure enough, hiccups happen, like setbacks happen, things happen. We found a surrogate, all was good, and then until things weren't. And then I was like, wait, what? Like, where did the wires get crossed here, Yeah. And I've heard other stories that are even like worse, and it's baffling, but it's a lot to process. But anyways, I think it's because if you have to switch, you literally have to go through the same process. So just like resets the thing. You have to re-interview a bunch of people. They ask so many questions that nobody ever talks about. Like you're never like, I
don't know. I do. Yeah.
All these questions, like, hey, what would you think if a surrogate did this to this and this? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I've never thought about that. I don't know what I'm okay with. And so that's really daunting in itself. But also when you have an experience where you had to let go of this one other surrogate, which was hard, I was like, well, how do I know now, like, the next one's better, right? You know what I mean? Because, like, she seemed great when we first started. And so, working with the doctor, my fertility doctor, the same one that I love, Dr. Amy, Working with her, but also talking with the agencies and just being like, okay, what do you like? Getting thoughts from the people that do this more often.
Yeah.
And so finally picked the one after. And I think, well, I was going to mention that what sucks too is, you lose a lot of money.
Well, yeah, it's
expensive.
expensive.
Yeah, because you're paying for their medications. You're paying that, like, it's just agents, like all the fees just start to add up. And you're just like, and that's not a common thing that people have resources to. So that's where I think it's so tough with infertility is like, what if you don't have a saving? Like, what if you tap into your savings? Like, now what?
Yeah.
It's impossible sometimes. We find our new surrogate and then things go great. And it's funny because my husband and I, we were between two of them. And I was like, my gut's telling me this is the one. And he's like, no, I think I liked the other one. And I was like, sorry, dude, like not today. After what's happened, I was like, I'm going with my gut here. And sure enough, she was great. Like it was, you look for things like, is she responsive? Is she, yeah, I think that was maybe our one thing, is communication. Because the other one was kind of like, you'd text her or message her and you wouldn't hear for a while. And you're just kind of like, okay, do you know what you're doing? Like,
yeah,
what's happening? So ours was amazing. She would always keep us up to date with appointments. I didn't even have to ask half the time. And when it all happened, though, we the news, I guess, what happened is a story I love to tell because it was right before COVID, went to the Philippines and we were there for a wedding. So it's great. And, all the news about COVID starting to happen. It's just in the Philippines, we were experiencing volcanoes erupting. And I was like, what in the world is happening? And,
God.
It was I don't know. My mom's texting me you got to be careful of the coronavirus. And I was like, you're overdoing this. No.
Before any of us had any clue.
Yeah. So before it all settled in, I was just like, oh, she's just worried again, Anyway, so we're in a hotel and we're like, okay, we have to do our first ultrasound to see if it's stuck. And we're like, cool. And we're just FaceTiming. And we're in this hotel in the Philippines and the Wi-Fi is just spotty as heck. And it was 4 a.m. maybe our time.
Oh my God.
And we had gone drinking. And so we were not in the best capacity. And I was like, okay, stay awake. Let's do this. We can do this. And so the audio's off, I think, because of the Wi-Fi or something happened. And so we're just watching. And then you just see the technician circle. And then she backspaces and then circles again. And she circles and goes baby A. And then she backspaces and then she circles again and goes baby B. And then we're I was like, Albert, my husband, I was like, I think there's two. She put baby A and baby B. And he goes, no. We're still hungover. He's just they made a mistake. Don't worry about it. They make mistakes all the time. I'm sure. It's okay. This is what backspace is for. And I was like, no, that's not. I was like, I feel it in my gut. And I was panicking. So I stayed awake the whole time because I think everyone was still, I think their day had ended. And so we had to literally wait a whole day for them to answer. Because I think after that, my surrogate, she had, the technician sends everything over to the fertility doctor to confirm what it all looks like and what's going on. So they can't tell us over the phone. So we literally had to. So I'm just Googling,
my God,
and an embryo split, and then I'm finding out that yes, it's rare, but also very common with frozen embryos. They have more of it's a little more common for them to split, or a higher chance, I guess I should say. There's a higher chance they will split. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so, we're just waiting and the doctor's like, yep, it's sure. And then actually before we talked to our doctor, I talked to my surrogate. She's like, we put one, right? I was like, we only had one, girl. Yeah. I think it was just shock. All of us were just in shock.
Yeah.
She was in shock, we were in shock. And I was like, but are you okay? Are you going to be okay if it's twins? And she's like, but are you going to be okay? And so we get the call from the doctor. I think we're on 3, a, joint call. And then she's like, yep, there's twins in there. And I was like, oh my God. And so it was so hard to not keep that to ourselves. We were with family and stuff. So it was really exciting news to share. But that was most of our journey. And so now we have the 4 kids, 2 twin boys. The embryo was the 2 boys. And then my son and daughter who are from South Korea. And so it's just been a wild ride now. They're all older now. So the ages are 10, 7. We just had birthdays, so I'm trying to remember. 10, 7, and 4. 10, 7, and 4. And it is a crazy house right now.
I was going to say, it sounds like a busy house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been a wild ride, but like I love to share it because obviously I have fun sharing it. Like I think I try to just do that so that people know that like everyone's story is different and there still can be found, joy can still be found within different ways of building and creating your family. And yet that's also still paired with the sadness and grief over, as a woman, not being able to experience pregnancy, carry your child. But you learn and find new ways to support yourself, but also tell yourself more empowering truths of like, but I get to be their mom and I get to do all the mom things. And I think that's a common thing that I say now is that motherhood goes beyond DNA. Like, yes, there's the connection points of genetically looking the same and maybe also knowing, it's gonna not be great when, like we don't know much of the birth parents, like health history and stuff. So that's kind of the hard part. But aside from that, like it also just kind of pushes you to like really, how we always talk about with kids, and you have kids too. So it's always like, celebrating your individuality and just like who you are as a person. So I think, but we find connection points in different ways. I think I just put a Threads post up being like, there are people that actually tell me that my daughter looks like me.
Yes.
And then I'm like, I think it's true in a sense because there's similarities there. And we're both Asian. So people, I think, that are not Asian sometimes just like, oh, Asians are Asian.
Yes.
But it's funny but there's a difference there too, is whereas like if I'm around a lot of Asians, they start and they're very upfront and they're just very like, you must be they try to guess my ethnicity and then they'll be like, is dad a different one because she looks different?
Yeah.
But otherwise people are just like, you guys are the same. And I'm like, that I think that comes from the whole nature versus nurture thing, right? Like, and I think in that Threads post, I even put like, when I start to notice her sassiness, I'm like, I need to cool it, like, like they're kids, they're sponges, they learn, they're observing, they're watching, they're learning. And so there's a lot that you can still, build on in terms of like relationship with your children, whether they're biological or not. And so I think it's just a powerful message to share with women who are struggling. And I know that there are some, like that I've talked to just in sharing stories or also clients of just like, how do you come to terms with the baby not being biological or like maybe half, like,
yeah.
And I think even in my journey, I was early on. So this is when they told me about my ovaries being old. And I think I was still processing that. And they were like, you can use an egg donor. And I was like, oh, that feels weird. No. At that time I was like, I feel like maybe I kind of felt like my husband was cheating on me. Like it was a different woman.
That's
right?
interesting. I think, yeah. Well, that's not talked about as often. Egg donation is not talked about as often as sperm donation is.
That's true. That is really true. Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's just, that's the kind of the way I had felt. And I was just like, and yeah, you're right. The sperm donation, because like a lot of same-sex couples, everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a wild conversation because you're just, now obviously I don't think, but it's not, I'm sure what's scary though, right, is like, I was scared to say that, like people are scared to say things like that because obviously, I don't want to offend anybody. But it's also just like you're processing. You're just like, how do I actually feel about it? Like, what does it mean to me? What does it mean? Like, how does that look like after? And now, I think same thing with my family, but other women that have done egg donation, I hear them all the time. They're just like, my baby's my baby. Like, I look at that baby and I'm just like, I just love you. Like, all those worries kind of just somehow go away. And all you do is focus all your love and energy in protecting that baby, loving that baby, supporting that baby. And so I think that's just something that I feel like hopefully lands with, with people that are going through infertility. It's just so hard. It's just such a hard thing to wrap your head around when you're trying so hard to, to get pregnant. I think we get focused on that. I think that's kind of like, that's why I was talking about my part where the surrogacy versus pregnancy. I was just like, oh, like, I think we get so stuck on like the pregnancy part, but what part do you truly want? Do you want the pregnancy part? Like, yes, of course, all respect for if like that's the only way that you'd want it. And then, I mean, I think like if I was set on it, I probably would have tried it. Yeah, I did. I obviously really considered it. I was like, okay, I can ask to go part-time or I can just quit. Yeah. And I was like, but then how do I pay for all of this?
Yeah, so there's so many things in your story that like, well, I want to pick it apart a little bit because there are so many things that even though I haven't experienced what you went through personally, there are things that resonate. So one of the things is I heard you use the word but a lot, like, oh, but this or but that, and I wanted to sort of put that power back to you and say like, and it can be and. Yeah. So I couldn't get pregnant, but I adopted and I was really depressed, but I was really happy because I had kids. And it's like you can be depressed. Yeah, you can be depressed and be grateful and be thankful and be happy. You can be happy and sad. You can be emotions are. I need to see Inside Out too. I mean, yeah. Apparently that really gets into that whole thing. Yeah. But the other thing that I want to touch on too is that like there's so much. I love that there's so much levity in this conversation that we're having, while also talking about some really difficult things. Yeah. Like you said from the get-go, you always pictured yourself having a big family. You wanted to have 5 kids. And then I mean, girl, more power to you.
I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking because I'm at 4 and I'm like, ugh.
So yes. So like you have to process that and you have to grieve that. So yes, we can talk about it with levity and we can laugh about it now. But like I'm sure there was a period of time in your journey that you were grieving the fact that you could not carry your own child. Mm-hmm. And then again, see, I'm just like picking little things out. Like when you're talking about surrogacy, hearing you almost feel like you had to like justify how picky you were. And I want to be like, girl, like this is your egg and this is your child. And like, of course, like if it can't be in your body, you want to have some kind of like control over that. So
you're right. I do that a lot. Yes. Right. I am like that. I am definitely just like, I need to justify a lot of it. I'm like, okay, but no, this is, Well,
and it's not me. I'm 100% not like, I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not like lecturing you or anything. I want to like give you that power back to be like, like what you went through and what a lot of people went through. It is heavy and it is hard and you can find joy and you can laugh about it and you can. And so what that proves to people who may be experiencing this right now or going through something like this right now is there's joy to be found. There is joy to be found. There's also a lot of crap. Yeah. There's a lot of crap.
100%. And I think the one thing I wanted to mention too is that like I think my story alone proves that like yes, we all ultimately want a baby, but I think the misconception or we get lost in the go of all of it, of like the timelines, the process, the cycles, and all of that. Of like this baby's gonna fix everything. Once this baby's here, I'm gonna be healed. Like all this trauma that I just experienced, all gone once this baby's here. Which is yes, like I said, it does. The worries kind of go away of just like of what the fears that you maybe were stewing about. Not stewing is probably like a strong word, but like you had some fears that going into a certain process, say the egg donation or sperm donor, whatever it is, but they do kind of go away as once the baby's here. But the problem, like the anxiousness of, I mean, at least for my own personal experience, I'll speak from there, is that I'm still a very obviously after being a mom, I was like, I feel like I've always had anxiety issues. I just never realized it until I think I was in the middle of COVID. They were like, I think you have anxiety.
I think that happened to a lot of people during COVID.
Yeah. And they're like, because I had like a panic attack where like my chest was like, I had to go in for like to the ER for a cardio thing. And I was just like, but they're like, oh, you're fine. You just had a panic attack. I was like, I just had a panic attack? Like, what?
Yeah, don't put the word just in front of that. Like, yeah.
I was like, okay, so now what do I do? So I think it's also flagging. And it's hard to tell women that are currently in the throes of infertility, in the trenches of it, to be like, address all your concerns now. And, like it's more of just like an eye-opening thing of just, a baby won't fix everything. Like you're going to go into transitioning into a mom and have all those sleepless nights. And so if you were still, like, I think with me specifically, right? Like we bring our first son home and I'm like, yes, baby, we're doing it. And then I'm like, oh, but I still have these remnants of like, I didn't get to carry him. And how does my family feel about it? Because being an Asian woman, like Asian culture, it's like a stigma to talk about fertility, and is very big news for like our family. But everyone was very supportive in the end. It was just, or like even from the get-go, they were just like overly excited. But questions still come up because it's new to everybody. They're like, they're gonna ask questions because they don't know, and so they'll and then there comes me being defensive, like, you don't know. Don't you know? And I'm like, no, Rachel, they don't know. That's why they're asking.
Yeah.
So just having that, level of compassion and patience with family and getting their support. But they were supportive regardless, right? And they still are.
I also appreciate you mentioning the stigma in the Asian community, because that is another thing that is not often discussed. And really in the BIPOC community in general, the cultural stigmas that go along with fertility. Can you sort of elaborate on that just a little bit, just for listeners?
I mean, I think for Filipinos in general, or not in general, for me, I'm going to speak more from my point of view, and I think it does apply to other Asian cultures as well, is that if you can't become a mom, or if your body is not, I think this is for everybody, but like, I think it really holds a lot of pressure for women that are Asian, that like around us, we see everyone that can just naturally get pregnant. Like it's very, very rare. Like I don't even know very many Asian people in my circle, extended circles. Like no one's done surrogacy or adoption. The people that have started to consider it only reach out to me because I'm the only other Asian person they know. And they ask questions of just like, well, how did your parents take it? And I'm like, they were fine. Why? What happened with yours? And they're like, they don't accept it. They just don't. Like they're not supportive. They just tell us don't do anything at all. Then like it's like I think this family wanted to adopt, so they were like, their family was just like, no adoption. You just don't have kids.
That's just a belief that's held. Like if your body is not going to do it.
Yeah, if your body's not going to do it, I think there just holds a lot of pressure that the woman must be like you have to be the person that starts this family and bears the kids and all that. So, and I just feel like there's a very high expectation of just like Asian women in general to just like do as you're supposed to from like your elders, and like it's definitely a lot of pressure. Because I definitely felt that way. I was just like, I don't get it. Like, what am I doing? Am I literally the only Asian woman that like can't seem to have a kid? Because I see a lot of other women that can't, but I'm like, but they're not Asian. Like, everyone just have like a secret Asian supplement that I'm like, did I miss something here?
I missed this one.
Yes. Out of all the million supplements I took, they must have missed this one, So I just think, so I think it's a very rare thing. It's not talked about, I think it almost feels like there's a negative connotation to it, right? Like it feels like, oh my God, like she can't. It's always like this whisper and you're like, what are, like, it's not, everybody's body's different. And I think they keep it hush hush. And just even with like, I think just in terms of the ways families are like brought together, like I don't know, like in the Filipino culture, everybody is just so easy. Like it's literally from the male perspective, like even the male factor of fertility, that was like way over our head. Like almost every guy we know in our extended circle, like we're friends with so many like Filipino, like different types of Asian backgrounds, and like rarely any issues, like, and that's the thing is like if there are issues, no one's talking about it.
No one's talking about it.
And then
yeah.
publicly they're not going to say it because like everybody's on social media. So if say like an Asian friend of mine was like, yeah, I'm experiencing infertility, you won't see it on their page. They're not going to talk about it because they don't want their parents to see it, because you don't know how their parents are going to see it. And I've always heard of like, I'm just afraid to tell them. I don't know what they're going to say. They're going to blame it on me. It's my fault. And that's the thing that like we hold that pressure that like I felt it too, because it was just like, well, you're just not eating right, Rachel. You have to. It turns into my fault, where it's like infertility is a medical diagnosis. Like it's not, I didn't just eat the wrong things and now I'm infertile. I forgot the supplement. Remember, like I don't know. Someone didn't give me that supplement, the vitamin. I don't know. So yeah. So just I think that's kind of I don't know, a lengthy way of saying it, but yeah, it just turns into the woman's fault really if it's, and no one really looks into like, oh, could it have been possibly on the male side?
Yeah.
So I think even my family, I felt like there were moments where I had mentioned it and they were just like, what? Like they didn't believe it, that like it was on his side and it wasn't my fault. I was like, why does it have to be automatically my fault? But I think that's also common with anyone that's also not Asian, right? I think we put it on ourselves of like, but I think it's just that pressure. I feel like it's not as accepted. I think with the Asian culture, it's like, there's only one way to do this. And if it's not going to be that way, we're not doing anything at all, Yeah. So,
no, but
and I don't know. And some may take it to the religious extent. Maybe, it's like, I think a lot of, with Filipinos, a lot of them are Catholic. And so a lot of it, then it turns into that, but I'm not going to go there because I don't like talking about it.
I don't blame you. It's okay. That's a wormhole we are not going to crawl down.
No, we're going to. Infertility is already a big enough rabbit hole of of emotions and stigmas and everything. So yeah, we'll keep it at that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you talking more about it though, because number one, up to this point, I don't have many guests who have gone through infertility to the extent that you have gone through it. So talking about that process is really important for people to hear. And then you are also the first Filipino woman that experiencing infertility that I have spoken to. But there are obviously, it's not just you in the universe that's experiencing this. So it's really important to me, and I'm thankful to you that you talk about it, because there's going to be someone out there being like, oh my God, it's not just my family. Yeah. Like it's not just, and it's not just me, and I'm not just putting these expectations on myself. Like, so I appreciate you bringing the cultural aspect into it.
Yeah.
So again, thinking back to what you talked about, and you did have support, like your family was supportive of you, despite maybe some cultural differences. And even though you did experience, obviously, the grief of not being able to carry your own child, and just everything attached to that, you did talk about doing a lot of work on yourself and doing a lot of work. So what did that look like? Were you seeing a therapist? Did you have some coping skills? Like what was that like for you?
For me, oh God, it's all the things, right? So I think but one thing that really helped me and that I try to tap into a lot, but it's not, I tap into a lot of it. I think it's literally, it's a mix, a melody of all of them. But it's definitely just being quick to recognize hey, I am flipping burnt out from just thinking about this damn thing, overthinking IVF, trying to figure out all the supplements, and being, telling my husband don't eat that shit because it's not, this crazy, you're not crazy, whoever's listening. I'm just saying you start to feel like you're just hammering down on everybody, and it's not fun. You're like, I'm not I don't like that version of myself. whenever I recognize that, it's like, okay, I need to take a step back. I need to just rest my brain from all of it. And so leaning into other things, and I don't like the words, I don't know. I just, saying self-care always sounds bleh.
I know.
I don't know. Maybe it's just overused. Like literally, it's really, for me, when I say rest, it's more of like turn off the trying to figure it out things, and like all the questions. It's like replacing them with something else. And so I think for me that in order to do that, I always tried to learn a new hobby. I always tried to do something different. And so in the middle of the adoption phase, I was like, I need to do something. Like but I was like, I already go to the gym every so often. Like I wasn't like a gym rat or anything. Like I'm familiar with it, right? Like I go, but I don't, like, I'm not like, but I'm like, that's boring, like it's not going to turn off my brain.
Yeah.
I picked up aerial arts. I went into like, if that's like, think Cirque du Soleil, the silks on and all of that. I like, I was like, I'm just going to try a class. I literally started going like twice a week. I would drive all the way to LA from where I was, which was like a 45-minute drive. It became my life. So obviously it's hard to do that once you have kids, if like you're dealing with secondary infertility, because once my son did come home, that was hard to redo. So I think that's where I struggle, because I was like, I need to find a hobby, and that's the one I want to do, but I can't physically get there all the time. The mom guilt sets in, right? You're just like, you feel torn. You're like, well, I want to do that because it's fun, but he's here and I should be here, and I think even with adoption and all of that, like my whole journey in general, it's like, I still to this day struggle, because I'm like, I wanted this so bad. I wanted this big family. But sometimes I'm sitting here like, what the fuck did I do?
I think we all feel like that.
Yeah, I'm tired. You asked me who was Rachel before mom. I was like, I don't even know who I am right now. What do I do outside of being a mom? So it's like literally you're like, it's like a whole rebirth of yourself. Like you're evolving, you're all these things. So I think forcing yourself to find a new hobby. Like right now, I think for me, and so I did that a lot. And then I think that time when did I started therapy, but more seriously, I think around that time of the surrogacy. I think so. It wasn't, but I do suggest that like it's almost like I wish that it was like an automatic thing. Like you become a mom, you look for that therapist right then and there.
They just give you one.
Yeah. Or here's one, or just like have it in the back court. Like do something to give yourself that added support that you don't have to think about, because there's no training on how to like figure out, like, and with new moms, I always tell them, I was like, the one thing I always advise you is like, if your mother-in-law or mom comes over and they ask to help, you tell them exactly what you want them to do. Like you tell them, I need you to do my dishes. I need you to do my laundry. I will be here with my baby on the rocking chair, like,
yes.
And I think that's, or send me food, like just cook me food and send it and drop it off in front of my door, because there's no way you're going to look at me with my greasy hair. So I think like definitely implementing things ahead of time helped, like, and doing like trying to focus on a new hobby or something that you used to like. So with aerial, like I got to a point where I actually could perform. I was like doing all the apparatuses. I was like really into it. And I still talk about it because I'm just like, oh, I wish I can get back into it. But I don't know. Now being close to my 40s, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm sure these women are probably well in their 40s, but they've been consistent, right? So I'm like,
hey, if Pink can do it, you can do it.
I love Pink. Yeah, she's amazing. So yeah, so I talk about that a lot, because finding that new hobby just challenges you to, learn about yourself. You end up being put in uncomfortable situations, so you kind of, your focus goes there where it's like, oh, I kind of feel silly, doing this, and you kind of laugh at yourself, all the things kind of soften, right? Yeah. Like you can laugh at yourself. You can start to recognize like, oh my God, like I just learned a new skill. I did something different. And you kind of just regain your footing in a bit, in a sense. I think that's like the biggest thing, is try to find some sort of like reset button for yourself that works. But yeah, so supporting myself with like, obviously my husband, and then friends was hard, but like, because I really truly felt like, because all my friends were Asian too, so I was like, they just don't get it, and then, and not to any discredit to them, they tried their best. And I tried my best too. Like I tried to share and then I'm just like, oh, that didn't land right. Like it doesn't. So finding community, I talk about that so much because you really have to find, doesn't even have to be like a giant community, just like a couple people that are in the same phase of life of you as you. So it's like, even in motherhood, it's like, you start to become friends with all the moms at school, pretty much, you know, like,
or on Threads.
Or on Threads, yes. There you go. So there's ways, but for the adoption one, like I really found a community there. Like I talked to them every day. We were sharing all the wins, all the stuff we were irritated about, and all that. And it's funny because then I never found a community when I did IVF, and I didn't find a community when I did surrogacy. And so I noticed the big difference. I'm like, I truly still felt alone, even with surrogacy, even though I had my 2 kids, life was going and it was fine. And I was like, I should be fine is kind of what I thought. And I was like, but there's still questions, like there's still things that I wish I had someone to be like, hey, when you did this, like, is this what happened? And I didn't. And I had my surrogate because she's done it before, but sometimes I felt like crossing the line. Like, I don't know, do I ask her these questions? Or it depended on the question, but like, it's not the same as having someone else that's kind of been in your shoes. And so I think definitely it's the community part that made a difference because, it still felt pretty lonely in the surrogacy route, even though I didn't have much issues going through it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like, that absolutely makes sense. So like you were in a good place.
Yeah, exactly.
But you didn't have that community. You didn't have a community to fall
relate
back on.
To like to relate and feel like, okay, I got this. Like, no, it's cool. Like, we're all good. Like, I met some people. And I will say that I guess what's an overarching theme? Like, you always with infertility, you start to you're afraid to let go of certain hopes and dreams. But then I think with mine, what kind of, I don't know, came to fruition or came to be was that like I would let go of certain hopes or just ideations or whatever I romanticized in my head. I kind of let some of those go, but I still experienced a lot of it. So my example is that with surrogacy, I had met a mom. All right, I did a lot of reach out. So I would suggest, like, if anyone's ever going through this stuff, always reach out to like the agencies you're working with or people that you know that maybe have, and say, like, do you know other people that I can connect to that are open to sharing their journeys? And so I found a mom who did surrogacy. She breastfed her twins. She induced lactation.
Yes.
And so I was like, and so given me who's like, okay, I like to do something new. I'm going to challenge my body. Let's do this.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So I tried. I even went into, it's very embarrassing now that I don't think I've ever shared this. I should probably do a podcast episode of myself doing this. But I even, I went to they said you get the medical grade pump.
Yeah.
And you just like, you practice it. Like, you prep your breasts pretty much to do it. And so I walk in and they're just like, but you're not pregnant. And I was like, I know, I'm going to induce lactation. And so they're trying to like keep a straight face, like, okay, yeah, let's do this, like,
oh my gosh.
I know, but it's fine. Like, I by this point, I feel like I've grown thick skin. I'm just like, whatever, I don't care. I'm doing this,
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think I guess what I'm trying to say is that, when you find your community, you start to learn more things and you start to realize that things that you kind of let go of, like I let go of like the idea of ever breastfeeding, ever giving breast milk. So I didn't accomplish the breastfeeding because I think leading up to the twins being born, I recognized like, oh, my poor 2 kids. I'm like, I'm sitting here at a pump not for no reason, but like trying to do something that my body's not naturally doing. And, here they are like, Mom, you want to play? And I'm like, I'm pumping. They're like, for what? And I'm like, oh, this is such a difficult conversation.
I can totally picture it too.
Yeah. So I'm like, you know what? I'll give it one more shot, like for a couple days. And if nothing's, because I started to feel it, like it was actually, I think I was probably there, but it started to hurt.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, maybe this is the brink of like, after the hurt, it actually comes out. Because this woman, she managed to do it. So it was like, I think she teaches women, and she's the one that kind of taught me, like, here's what you have to do. And so I know it's possible, but given that, again, circumstances, knowing your capacity, knowing what's your priorities in the moment, and just being able to recognize that and take a step back and be like, okay, I'm obviously stretching myself like super thin here, you know, and I want to be a good mom, and, you know, I want to get prepped, like you start nesting and all these things. Like, what am I doing strapped to a pump, you know, like,
Yeah.
and so anyway, fast forward, end that. The surrogate, she gives me breast milk, which is fine, and that's great. And then I don't even know. I'd have to find out. I can't remember how I found this out, but there's a Facebook group with like local donor milk, like donations.
Yep.
And so I can't remember. I'm going to have to see if it comes into my memory. But I found that, and I was able to feed the twins breast milk for up to 6 months, which I never thought would ever happen. You know, and then I found a couple of friends that were actually in that group, and they're like, "Hey, we went to college together." I was like, "Oh, hey, so do you have milk?
Can you help a sister out?"
Yeah. So like, I just literally drove around the Bay Area collecting breast milk, and it was during COVID, so I was like, "Albert, we have to buy a giant freezer because I have to store all this milk," and that was a project in itself. And so it's like, I tell people that because I'm just like, look, like, it's something I never thought I'd ever do. You know, I never thought, for one, have 4 kids. Never thought I would, you know, give any of my kids breast milk. You know, it's like, you know, things surprise you, I guess, along the way. And you're just like, not all the time. Your dreams may still come to life, just in a different way. And it's really the how that kind of molds and flows based on what's happening. But, you know, staying the course and trying to figure out your support system and finding ways to incorporate ways to just feel good about yourself. Like, I think with the aerial example too, it's like that helped me remind me that my body is still my body's still a functioning body. Nothing's wrong with it. I am strong. I can do hard things. You know, all those things.
All the affirmations.
Yeah, all the affirmations. It just made me feel powerful physically. And it's like, it helped me kind of not I was going to say suppress. It wasn't suppressing it, but like heal that part of like, my body's not working, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, because I think in general, we say, oh, my body doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Of course it does. It's like, it's keeping you alive. You're doing all these things. And so it's definitely the whole expressing your, you know, practicing gratitude. And, you know, I never got into journaling or meditating, but I think talking things out for me really helped. So connecting with people that I can relate with was like the best form for me. And then finding ways, like new hobbies and movement, you know, like now through moments of parenthood where I'm just like, I can't deal, you know, I do a lot of walking, and I'm trying to figure out a new hobby, I guess I should say too, is like something I'm trying to do again. Cause I don't know. Yeah. It's just, it's a lot. I hope I'd answer your question. I'm trying to think back.
You did. No, you did. You answered my question beautifully. You kind of brought us full circle beautifully. Well, you did, because so what I want to highlight, again, I highlighted it earlier, but you have this amazing way of finding the glimmers. Like, and again, for listeners who, I don't know if you haven't listened to any of my episodes, or if you're hiding under a rock, a glimmer is the opposite of a trigger. So amidst things that were very, very challenging for you and went and really challenged your vision of yourself and your future, you found joy. And you're still finding joy, and you can laugh, because holy crap, have we laughed a lot through this episode.
I laugh a lot. It's like
I do too.
Every work setting I was ever in, or just, I guess, even my cousins, they're just like, oh, we know when Rachel's around, you can hear her laugh.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Yay.
Yeah. Well, because you've talked about so much of this, and the common theme being community and connection, which, hello, we're Quiet Connection. That's what we're here for. I would love to know if you could go back in time before you found out about any of your fertility struggles or anything like that, and you could sort of instill something within yourself to get you through that phase of your life. It can be a phrase, it can be a thought, it can be a feeling, anything. What do you think you would have instilled in yourself?
Oh, that's a good one. Oh my God. I would have definitely said I'm trying to think of what's a good one.
Anything's a good one. That's the beauty of this.
Well, because I was thinking like, use your grit and your, I guess I was going to say work ethic, because I was just very much like a figure things out person. Use it to your advantage, right? Like you can figure things out and trust yourself that you will always figure it out no matter what.
Yeah.
And so just to not give hope in that sense, but also try to find ways to quiet your brain.
Yeah.
Learn how to quiet the brain. I think, and, obviously I disclose that I do have anxiety. So it's like, it's hard, but it's for most people, like you can, or for people that are better at it, you can find ways. I would tell myself, like, definitely lean heavily into learning how to just quiet things down. Like it's all the self-talk it goes beyond like exactly what reality is. Like it's not even half of it's not true.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going through that with my daughter, who just like, she has all these perceptions of all these things. And I'm like, those things are not true, girl.
I know exactly what you mean. Yes.
So it's like, I think like with her, like I'm doing it right now. I'm trying to instill it in my daughter. Like, I hear you, like these are real fears and feelings, but let's look at it, like what it is right now. Like, is it really true? Like are they really thinking these things, or is this a fact? And, not to let yourself kind of get carried away with it. I think not to sit too long in the thoughts. I guess, just don't overthink. I just let it be, like not to say that. I think that's the difference is like, I think there's a difference between let it be and kind of letting go, like accept, like moving on or letting go. Right.
Yeah,
So I think it's just kind of like finding that stillness, like get better at finding that stillness, Rachel. I think it was like, that was it. I feel like I constantly had to be busy. I had to be doing something. And I'm only like learning how to be like, okay, it's okay to be quiet. I went on a walk today and I was like, I didn't put headphones on. I was like, let's try to not do a bunch of things to distract my brain,
Yeah.
Like try to learn to be okay to hear the thoughts, but tell it to in your head.
So find the quiet.
Find the quiet. Yeah. The quiet connection with yourself.
Yes. And the quiet connection that you have now extended to my listeners, which I am so thankful for. Rachel, thank you for meeting with me. I want to know, and my listeners want to know, where can we find you? Where can we find you to keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, again, like we talked about already, Threads is where I'm at.
Threads is amazing.
Threads is the best. So you can find me and Chelsea on Threads.
Yes.
But I'm also very much on Instagram. So the same name. So it's at Rachel_Mangajas. And then I do have my podcast called It's How You Carry It. And it talks about all things my own journey, but also just, I'm also trying to bring in more stories, sharing their infertility journeys and looking for women too that are like going through, the surrogacy journey, embryo adoption, all that kind of stuff, because it's that stuff, it's not talked about. So having those stories would be amazing. So yeah, talking about these hard topics on there. So you're welcome to come find me there as well. But yeah, other than that, it's been fun.
I've absolutely loved chatting with you. All of everything that Rachel just talked about will be linked in the show notes. So listeners, check the show notes and you will be able to find her. And thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for holding space for not only your journey, but for the journeys of others that may be going through something similar.
Oh my God, of course. It was such an honor. Thank you for having me. I love conversations like this. And you made it so easy. You made it so easy for a host. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Rachel, thank you for sharing your story with me and for all the laughs along the way. Your ability to find joy amidst the challenges you've faced is a true strength. I had so much fun chatting, and I hope my listeners will check out your podcast, It's How You Carry It, to hear more from you. You can keep up with us on Quiet Connection by following us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at Quiet Connection Podcast. You can help our community grow by leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and consider sharing our episodes on social media. To share your personal journey, you can contact us through our website at quietconnectionpodcast.com or by email at quietconnectionppmh@gmail.com. Join us next time when another story is told and you realize you are not alone. I see you.